after you've gone through all your expenses and you've made those necessary cuts, right? And you still don't have the cash flow that you need in order to make those target allocations while you're still paying the bills. That's the topic that I want to talk about today. And I want to give you some action items that you can do to navigate the situation. Today, what I want to talk about specifically as the subject is, what do you do when you just can't cut any more expenses? And it's interesting because I've been getting quite a few questions about that. Like, what do you do when you can't cut expenses, when, you've done everything you could, you've gone through your budget, you've eliminated everything that is kind of miscellaneous, that's not really needed. What do you do when you can't cut any more expenses? And recently, last month in our deep dive, we actually had 2 sessions. We really focused on that. We did our budget exercise, right? And it was a powerful exercise. And for some people, it was very liberating, like, oh my gosh, I actually see what's coming through my bank accounts right now. For some people, it was very eye-opening. They didn't know what was being charged. They were like surprised by all these auto pays that they were experiencing. For some people, it was actually frustrating, right? Because they're like, how do I fit like a square into a round peg, right? How do I make all this work? Because I feel like I need all of those things. I feel like I need every single thing. And I'll be honest with you, when I do my budget, which I do every single year, and I do it at the beginning of the year, sometimes it's a emotionally triggering experience when I'm doing my own budget, right? Because it always means having to evaluate, having to change things that I really love. And it was especially challenging this year because we went through a corporate restructure, right? We actually split our company in half. And so it was a very pretty drastic change, and it required some pretty significant adjustments in order to reconfigure what things look like and what do things look like going further and beyond. And anytime you make adjustments, right? Anytime you make changes, right? It's an emotional event anytime you make changes. And so it's really important that whatever you do when you're doing this budget, whatever emotions you're experiencing, you don't want to stay stuck in those emotions, right? You don't want to stay stuck in those feelings. And I think that sometimes when you're doing a budget, sometimes what happens is it can place you in a scarcity mode, okay? And that's not an energy that you want as a business owner to bring into the world. You don't want to necessarily go into the world with a scarcity mindset, right? Because when we're feeling limited, when we're feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to hold everything tight, sometimes that blocks our blessings, right? It blocks our blessings and it doesn't allow us to be open to new things. And it's okay, initially when you're going through your budget to have those emotions. They're normal emotions to have, and it's okay to sit with it a bit, right? But as you come into awareness of your situation, as you absorb your next steps, right? Because you quickly want to go on and go, what am I going to do next? Now that I've set up this budget, I've set up boundaries in my business, and you know what expenses you're going to allow in your life. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have this scarcity mentality fester, right? You don't want to create an aura around you of scarcity and limitations, right? You don't want to do that because you're going to have a hard time being open for new opportunities. And you want to be open to new opportunities. You want to be able to be open to new business, right? So you definitely don't want that negative vibe that you're experiencing to stay with you, right? You don't want that to happen because you don't want those negative vibes to impact your blessings or how you're going to show up in the world, right? And so before I begin today, I just wanted to leave you with that message that the budget doesn't define you. It's just part of that awareness that you have to be aware of, part of the boundaries that you're setting for your expenses, but it doesn't define you. And from a practical standpoint, when you have done your budget and there's nothing left to cut, you've been pretty responsible, you've cut everything that you could cut. And what that means is that whatever's left in your budget, right, those are things that are critical for your operations, right? It's critical for your operations, critical for your growth. Now you found yourself, after you've done the responsible thing, after you've gone through your budget, that you find that you just can't cut anything else out, right? And all the things that are left in this budget are things that, they really do have an ROI. It makes things easier for you. It saves more time. And cutting out these things, right, represents a carving into your future revenue or your future growth, right? And so you're really hesitant about cutting anything else. You don't want to cut anything else. And so after you've gone through all your expenses and you've made those necessary cuts, right, and you still don't have the cash flow that you need in order to make those target allocations while you're still paying the bills, That's the topic that I want to talk about today. And I want to give you some action items that you can do to navigate the situation. So that some tools in your toolbox that you can really take going forward to navigate. How do I do this? Now that I've cut everything that I can possibly cut, what do I do? What do I do right now in order to do that? And especially if you're on that fence that, you're still not quite at budget and you want to get at budget, these are just some things that you can do. And the first thing that I'm going to say, and it's going to sound really odd, but this is really critical with you, is the first thing I'm going to tell you is calm down. Absolutely calm down. And the reason why I say this is because you were never intended to make your target allocations overnight, okay? You were never intended to make that overnight. These were not overnight changes. Nobody expecting you to make overnight changes. And I don't want you to put pressure on yourself to do that. Because when you're implementing Profit First, it's a minimum of a 12-month process. And for some of you guys, it's going to be an 18-month process. And that's okay because where you start from is where you're starting from. And so don't feel like you have to get here overnight, okay? Because it's a process. And just like dieting, you would never put yourself on a no food diet, right? I think I tried a no food diet when I was a teenager and it probably lasted one day when I did a no food diet. And you're not going to do a no food diet because you're not going to live if you do a no food diet. Your body can't live without food. It needs that energy in order to function, to be able to wake up in the morning and do the things that you need to do. And so just like you wouldn't go on a no food diet, you wouldn't go on a no expense diet in your business finances either if you're expecting to keep going or keep growing, right? It's just not a fair expectation. And just like it took years to gain weight, nobody gained weight overnight, right? It took years of doing it. And it also probably took you years to get into that financial predicament that you're in. For me, when I started my Profit First journey, there were some expenses that I couldn't get out immediately, right? And these expenses were typically what I would call contractual fixed costs. So they were things that I had signed the dotted line way before I heard about Profit First, right? I had visions of ROI, I had visions of things working out, right? And I had signed some contractual fixed cost contracts, right? And these were contracts that typically had a 12-month commitment. And to get out of these contracts, it would be a major legal battle, right? To get out of these contracts, meaning that I would have to go to court. It would probably damage my credit trying to get out of these things. And that wasn't worth it, right? Building a reputation, whether it be personally or in your business, it takes a long time to build out a reputation. And so I did not want to break that reputation. There were credit cards that, had been used for investments. There were lines of credits that just couldn't be paid overnight. And these were all things that I had to deal with when I was pulling my Profit First strategy together. So these are things that I couldn't just make disappear overnight. They were there because they had come from habits that had started way before I heard about Profit First, right? They were things that I thought would work, promises that were made. And some of them had worked, right? And so these commitments that I had signed could not necessarily just go poof. They couldn't just go away. And so when I was doing my budget, I had to make these monthly commitments, these monthly expenses part of my budget. I had to actually incorporate this as a budgetary expense because it was going to be a pull on my cash flow, right? And these commitments soaked up sometimes significant part of my cash flow each month. And that's why it's important as an entrepreneur, especially now that you know better, right, to watch that accumulation of debt, right? Because it's a lot easier to get into debt than to pay it off later, right? And so, when you're dealing with an expense, when you're dealing with some type of potential investment, you have to think about, whether you pay off this expense now or you pay it off later, one day you're going to have to pay it off. So it's better just to tackle the expense head on, right? And avoid debt like a beast, right? Because, I see so many entrepreneurs, they take on debt, right, in order to incur more revenue. They look at it as advertising expense, they look at it for marketing, but the reality is no investment is ever guaranteed, but the repayment of debt, that's guaranteed. You're going to have to repay that debt, especially if you want to continue to grow your business and have credit, you're going to have to pay off that debt. And if you played in the area of marketing, which, we all have, when you're dealing with marketing companies or you've done marketing yourself, there's this so-called testing, right? And the reason why it's called testing, because sometimes it works and sometimes it's just learning, right? And which, by the way, is necessary as part of growing and figuring out how to attract your market is testing, right? And more often than not, what you're finding, we've got some people that are in marketing here, more often what you're going to find is that you fail your way to success, right? You kind of learn, oh, that didn't work, this did work. You fail your way in success. And no matter what guru you're working with, what expert you're working with, there's no one strategy that fits all. There's what worked for you, it may not work for me and may not work for the next person, right? It's everyone has to treat their strategy in some way in order to figure out what really works for them, which is why they call it testing. So as an entrepreneur, control what you can control. And for your marketing endeavors, for your advertising, just set aside a portion of your revenue for reinvestment. If you're starting out and you want to put a bigger investment, maybe you start with 5% of your revenue. If you've been established for a while, maybe 1%. But go ahead up front and establish what percentage do you want to use for your marketing, for your advertising initiative. What do you want to spend for ads, for your marketing, and then just commit that percentage of revenue for reinvestment. And like I mentioned in point number one, earlier, calm down. You will get through this, okay? You will absolutely get through this. You do not want to bring this aura of scarcity into your future. And just like I mentioned, I don't think that you can cut your way to success, okay? I don't think that you can have a business that you continue just to cut everything and cut your way to success. It takes a combination of things, of marketing, of advertising, sales, in order to earn that success, as well as cutting costs. And I do believe that it takes more money sometimes to create more of it, right? Either time or money is what you're going to invest. But it doesn't help you to beat yourself up by the situation. We don't want anyone abusing themselves here, because you will get out of this. You will get out of the situation. And you should be proud of yourself. You should be proud of yourself for realizing that you're in this situation, right? Be proud of yourself for even having this epiphany. There's so many entrepreneurs out there, they haven't even awoken to this fact yet. So celebrate that you're realizing the situation that you're in. And that beginning part of realizing the situation you're in is taking a collection of inventory of where are we at today and what expenses are even coming through, and understanding that. And progress happens in incremental steps, right? Nobody wakes up overnight and has a success. One day you're going to look behind you and you're going to realize how far you've actually come. Check out podcast episode on the Profit Talk, where I talk in depth about how overnight successes are really 15 years in the making, okay? There are no overnight successes. We've all failed our way forward. Nobody is an overnight success. Now, the next step for you is for the items that are remaining in your budget. So after you've taken out all the expenses, you've tweaked your yellow as far as you can do, for the items that are remaining in your draft budget. And yes, I called your budget a draft. And the reason why I called your budget a draft is because your budget is always evolving, okay? If your budget is staying the same, that means you're not looking at it, okay? That means you are not looking at your budget if your budget is staying the same. But your budget is always evolving. And I look at my budget at least quarter. And what I'm going to ask you is there a way of doing those things that you still need or still want and getting that same service level for a lower cost, okay? Is there a way of doing it at the same level and getting it for a lower cost? And that's my point number two. Is there a way of getting that same service that you're paying for at a lower cost? At our company, we use a software called Infusionsoft. I'm not recommending it or recommending it. This is probably one of the CRMs that are out there, one of the many CRMs that are out there. And we've used Infusionsoft for years, okay, years. And whenever you guys are building into a software, one of the things that you're going to find is very hard to change softwares. Now, Infusionsoft is a very powerful software. It can do some amazing programming, but it's also very expensive as a CRM to scale with it. There's a user cost. If you add more people to your list, it gets more expensive. So very expensive. And recently, we found that Dusable, a software there, again, I'm not recommending a software. What we found was Dusable can do just about the same thing for about $40 a month instead of the $333 a month that we're currently paying for the CRM. Now, if you guys have ever gone through a data migrations are extremely painful, right? They're extremely painful. And no one wants to do a data migration unless it's the last alternative, right? Because you got to learn how to use the software. You got to figure out how to get the data over. You got to make sure that it connected right. And we still have to investigate if Dusables have all the functionality that we're used to having with Infusionsoft. But there is a less expensive alternative to Infusionsoft, right? There's a less expensive alternative. And so my question for you is, what less expensive alternatives may be available for you? What less expensive alternatives are available for you? And perhaps at this time, which happens to everybody, it might be overwhelming to switch providers, right? So if this is your busy time or busy season, this may not be the time that you're ready to switch softwares, right? If you've got a lot going on personally or in business, this may not be the best time. And depending on what you have going on, it may be impossible, right, to actually make a data migration right now. But go ahead and put it on your radar. Put it on your radar that this is something that I want to explore things that may be of lower cost. And not just put it on your radar, but go ahead and schedule it in. Schedule it into a time. If there's a make an appointment type of setting, maybe schedule it a few months in advance or a few weeks in advance. Schedule that time where you can explore that data migration, where it's going to be more palpable to you, where you're going to be in the energy that you're going to be able to look through that and make that change. So the key is, not just realizing, oh my goodness, this is expensive, but actually scheduling that time to explore alternatives. Give yourself a day, on your calendar where you're just going to look at different vendors that are out there. You're going to do some Google search. You might be able to watch some demos of things happening, but schedule that time, because what gets recorded, right? What gets put on that calendar means that it's a date, right? It's a date, and what gets recorded means it's going to happen. So go ahead and schedule on your calendar that time to give yourself to look at different alternatives for lowering that particular expense. Now, there are going to be contracts that you're locked in, right? We talked about those contracts. And it's important when you're locked into these contracts, it's important to know, when will these contracts end, right? When are these contracts going to be up? When will I be free, right? It's important to know. And I would say go ahead and write the end date 30 days before. I would say even 35, 40 days before in your calendar, so you can monitor that, right? So you want to write down in your calendar, when is this contract going to end? So many people don't write that down. And in the meantime, this expense that you're contractually obligated to follow, we just consider that sunk costs, okay? Sunk costs are expenses that you incurred that you really can't do anything about, right? And it's really important that you understand that concept of sunk costs. What happens a lot of times is too many people hold on to something, right? They hold on to something that once was really good, once was really beneficial to them, right? And they think to themselves, I've invested a whole lot of money into this. I put a lot of time in this. I had a lot of programming done. I put a lot of money and effort into this, and I might as well just keep it, right? I just might as well keep it. It's too much work to go look at different alternatives. But the problem is sometimes holding on to a thing that you paid for, especially if you're not using it anymore, it's not the best thing. It's absolutely not the best thing. And it's not allowing you to move forward, right? And it can be whether it's mentally holding you back or financially not allowing you to explore newer alternatives. At the end of the day, you have to accept sunk costs as it is, right? It is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. And so you have to just make plans to move on. Plans like putting it in your calendar, 45 days before the contract terminates. You just have to make plans to move on, because if you can no longer use that expense, you just have to make plans to let it go. Pay it up and move on. Don't let it sink any more of your energy or take up any more of your aura or your possibilities. Just accept that it's sunk costs. Allow it to move on. Don't allow sunk costs to bring you down or remind you of a past failure or even gray out your future. Just move on, okay? Sunk costs is just that. It's sunk costs, okay? And then just plan for the day that you're free. Plan for the day you're free. And for now, you may have to take less. You may have to take less, especially if you're in a contract or if you're in debt, but there's a learning point here, right? It's a learning point here that's really important. It is important as a business owner. It's important as a business owner that you stay flexible, right? Avoid those long-term contracts. Avoid those contracts that are over 12 months, right? You want to remain flexible in your contracts, right? You want to, I would even say if there's an ability to do month to month, it's better to do month to month than those year contracts. It again stresses that importance of being flexible. Point number three, renegotiate. Renegotiate is point number three. One of the things that your vendors are experiencing right now, your vendors want to keep your business. First of all, your vendors absolutely want to keep your business, okay? Especially in the world of tech layoffs. You guys have seen it on the news. You've seen Facebook, you've seen layoffs in Twitter, all over tech, right? There's been tons of change in tech, and tech needs cash. Tech needs cash right now. And sometimes, the way it works is you just have to ask for the terms that you want. You just have to ask for the terms that you want. As part of our budgeting process, we actually reached out to several of our software as a service providers that we subscribe to. And as we went to cancel their subscription, they asked if we would consider staying on if they lowered their price. That's what they asked. And it completely surprised me. I thought you cancel and you're just done with it. And I mean, they were dramatically lower offers. Like if I was paying $97 a month, they were reducing it down to $9.99. I mean, like $90 a month savings. Isn't that crazy? And of course, for some of these softwares that I was highlighted in yellow that I really liked, I said, heck yeah. Yeah, I'll go for $9.99 versus $97 a month. And, of course, they're hoping that I'm going to forget about the auto renewal, but that's a whole different subject. And you got to watch those auto renewals. But they were telling me that if I stayed with them, they were willing to cut their price by $90 a month or over $1,000 a year just because I attempted to cancel their software. We've been customers of Verizon for like many, many years. I want to say like over a decade now. We had Sprint before, but we had like no reception. Like you had to stand in like one little corner in order to get reception of Sprint. I called Verizon. I said, hey, Verizon, what can you do to help me lower my bill? I wasn't expecting much, but then the person on the phone offered me 40% off each cell phone for up to 1 year. Can you believe that? No contract needed, up to 1 year, 40% off of our cell phones. And then I said, okay, well, I'm on a roll now. I'm on a roll. Let me just go ahead and call Xfinity because, Comcast, they do our phone and our internet. And I gave Xfinity the same conversation, right? And they then went ahead and reduced our price by 75% just for signing a 2-year contract. So I know I talked about 1-year contract, but like literally the savings would have been enough that even if I had to move offices and I canceled the contract, I still would have been ahead. So this was really good. So let your vendors know, hey, I'm struggling right now. I'm struggling with cash flow, struggling. Okay. That's the conversation you want to have. Tell these vendors, I really like what you're doing. I've been loyal. I want to stay loyal. But what can you help me do in order to lower my costs so I can stay with you? What can you do for now? And interestingly, you're going to find that a lot of people out there want to help you. They actually want to help you. They're customer service for a reason. They want to help you. They want to provide good customer service. And nobody wants to be mean to a customer, right? Nobody wants a bad review, right? Everybody wants to help you, right? They don't want to be the one that's responsible for losing a customer. Even loans and credit card terms, they can be renegotiated, okay? Lenders don't want to see you default. Lenders do not want to see you default, right? And if it's an unsecured line, like a credit card or a line of credit, this lender has everything to lose, right? They don't want you to default. So the question is, can you refinance? Can you refinance or consolidate this loan so that you earn a lower interest rate? Is there an opportunity for consolidation? Can you ask the lender, hey, can you lower my monthly payments right now? Even for a short period of time, can you just lower my monthly payments, maybe for 6 months, a year? And you might have to spend a day on the phone and your throat might be really, really dry. So drink a lot of honey infused tea. I love like the lemon tea with honey, because you're going to be on the phone for a long time and we don't want you to lose your voice. But it will be the best way of saving money. So get on that phone, call those vendors that are remaining, call every single one of them, just see what can happen for you. Point number four, what can you do to increase your revenue? Yes, what can you do to increase your revenue? And when I think of this, I think of, in the past, when you look back at, the different marketing strategies that you use, the different sales strategy, what was your biggest source of leads in the past for you? What was the biggest source? Was that networking for you? Was that going out to lunch or having coffee with somebody? Was that advertising? What was your biggest source of lead generation? What worked for you? What gave you the most leads? And what are you doing right now to generate those leads? Because if you're still staying in budget energy and you're still staying in scarcity mode, you might need to get back out there, right? The world still needs you, right? They need what you're doing. They need your talent, right? We need you to get back out there into the world, right? What are you doing right now to generate leads, right? Because if your business is not growing right now, if your business is not on the up and up and you're not getting more clients, that means your business is dying, okay? That means your business is dying. We want growing businesses. And sometimes when we focus on cutting, right, we get lost in that scarcity mindset. And what happens is we stop ourselves from seeing options of what's in the future and what's right in front of us. So we got to get out of that energy and look ahead. And like I said, once you've done your budget to the best of your ability, right? And your budget is balanced, right? And I mean, like, we're not dipping into debt to pay our bill. We're not borrowing from our line of credit to pay our bill. That's what I mean by that. If your budget is balanced, right? Because we don't want to be borrowing, right? That means we're going backwards there. You might have to take a lower profit, right? You might have to take a temporary lower profit, while you're experiencing this balanced budget, for the next 8 months or so, for you to get out of these sunk costs or these contractual obligations. But once your budget is balanced, and move on. Move on. Don't stay in scarcity mode, right? Keep looking for the bright side. Keep looking for the newest lead. Keep looking for that next big sale for yourself, right? Don't allow your business to die because you are mentally in the scarcity mode, right? We don't want your business to die, okay? So get out of that funk if any of you guys went into the budget funk. And the next question is, have you increased your prices for inflation? Okay, have you done that? The world is happening around you. While you've been busy running your business, the world has been happening around you. Egg prices, everybody's talking about, they're like, where can I get a chicken? So I can just raise chickens in my backyard because egg prices are going up. I just heard that fruits and vegetables are also expected to go up. We all know the labor prices have been rising, right? Have you adjusted your own prices for inflation? Have you adjusted for that? Because sometimes it's not an expense problem, right? Sometimes it's not an expense problem. Sometimes you're just not charging enough for what you do, right? And I'm still meeting entrepreneurs today that I'm jumping on the call with, and they haven't raised their prices since 2019. I'm like, you must be like going out of business. They haven't raised their prices since 2019. So make sure you have adjusted for inflation. Make sure you've adjusted your prices for inflation. And then finally, what are your customers asking you to do more of right now? Perhaps there's a revenue generation opportunity in this. Maybe what your customers are telling you is really a hint for your next steps. So I hope that today was extremely helpful for you. And until the meantime, may the profits be with you.